Okay, so we're going to be talking about the drama triangle today, which is basically a pattern, a cyclical pattern of dysfunctional social interactions. And we're specifically going to be focusing on the victim role in the drama triangle, which is important. The victim typically is the person that's using endless excuses to avoid responsibility. They see themselves as powerless, believe others should feel bad for them. They rely on others to make choices for them a lot, encourage others to fight their battles. They want validity. I just made up my own word there. Validation, sympathy, and attention. And ultimately, they may rely on enablers. The persecutors might be in the mix. But a victim often turns into a persecutor if you don't feel bad for them when they want you to. So if you're kind of like, hey, why don't you just get off your butt and do these things and make your life better? They'll be like, oh, it's so easy for you. And they'll start blasting you. And blaming you for being insensitive. So that's the victim role. And there was another couple doctors had written a book, and their theory on the drama triangle is that at the end of the day, everyone wants to be the victim. The rescuer, when the rescue attempts fail, they get to hold the victim's cup and be like, oh, I tried to make things better and it didn't work. The persecutor, after they've been, harshly accusatory of everyone and saying all these mean things, when people call them out, they're like, oh, I was just trying to help people be better, poor me. And then the victims obviously got the victim's cup. So everybody in the drama triangle is kind of vying for this victim's cup indirectly in some way, shape, or form. So ultimately, it's all about reclaiming personal power to get past being the victim. So one of the things we're going to do is there is a number of predisposing attitudes that can make someone more inclined to pretending to be a victim. So we're going to go through the victim baggage claim. All right, we're going to go through each of these one at a time. It's a great self-assessment to see, hey, has that ever applied to me? Or do I know somebody who acts like that? And then we're going to replace these different attitudes with the drama stopping truth. This is where we kind of have to get into the nitty gritty and kind of undo some of the programming that has predisposed us to being victims. All right, so why don't we do it this way? For each of these statements, I want you to score yourself 1 to 5, okay? 1 means almost never. 2 means you do this occasionally. 3 means you do it about half the time. 4 means you do it fairly often. And 5 means almost always. Okay? So you want to score it 1 to 5, each of these statements. All right? And they all relate to victim mentality, so we can embrace warrior mentality, which is the more powerful way to live. Statement number 1, do you ever blame other people for the way you feel? For example, someone upset me or someone made me mad. Okay? Score that 1 to 5. 1 means I almost never do that. 2 means occasionally. 3 half the time. 4 fairly often. And 5 almost always. So it's 1 to 5. The lower the score, the less you do this. Do you ever blame other people for the way you feel? For example, someone upset me or someone made me mad, or, anything along those lines. So think about that. And first of all, why is it a bad idea to do this? Anyone have any thoughts on why it's a bad idea to do this?
Because it's everyone else's fault. Going down that rabbit hole of not taking on, personal responsibility to be whatever mood you should be in, and not feeling that you're taking on someone's animosity or just changing your mood based on someone else in general.
Yeah, so we're surrendering the power over our feelings.
Exactly.
Now, can we control our thoughts? Like, can you think a different, if a thought shows up in your head and it's not a good thought, can you switch it to a better thought? Yeah, you can control your thoughts. Do our feelings come from our thoughts? Therefore, we can control our feelings to some degree here, right? So, a warrior way to look at this is feelings come from thoughts. We control our thoughts. Therefore, we control our feelings. We're responsible for our emotional reactions, and we can take steps to improve them. We can choose peace rather than whatever this is right now. Right? So, instead of saying this person walking down the street, gave me a mean look and made me angry, we could say, I wonder why they did that. That's curious. I wonder what makes people do what they do. We can choose a different thought. So that's the idea here with victim mentality. We don't want to ever blame our emotions on somebody else, because then we're surrendering control. And that's part of pretending to be a victim, right? All right. Number 2, do you ever blame others for what you believe? 1 to 5. So, do you ever blame others for what you believe? So, why is it a bad idea to do this? Why is it bad to blame others for what we believe?
Because they can't control it.
Yeah, we choose what we decide what we choose to accept. Right? So it once again, we're surrendering the agency of control. So a warrior way to look at this would be, we have to take responsibility for the concepts we come to believe. We're responsible for what we believe. And you know what? If our beliefs are giving us trouble, we can change our beliefs. We can challenge them and come up with something better. Right? So once again, it all comes back to reclaiming power. All right?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. That's why I didn't mention it. It's just they're taking that from you, right? It's like, I can believe whatever I want to believe, but this person made me believe this.
Yeah. He told me that, and so it's very, and that's why as you know, I'm not a huge fan of truth through belief.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just an easy scapegoat on anything bad you do. You can say they made me believe this, whatever, right? And it's like no. That's why I'm always big on truth through experience rather than blind belief. Okay. Number 3, do you ever feel other people caused you to act the way you did? Or, for example, do you ever say, I am this way because of somebody else? Oh, I'm really paranoid in this relationship because someone cheated on me in the past. Or, I act this way because of my mother or my father, or ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. Do we ever do that? 1 to 5. Now, some people, by the way, are going to argue when I give them this assessment, like, oh, but this is true. You are that way because of a person. And it's like, oh, that's you being very firm in your victim mentality. Not necessarily.
What if it's just in general influence? Like, I'm a lot like my dad, kind of quirky. That
Perfect.
Kind of stuff.
Yes. And that's a great way to look at it. You can be like, they influenced me.
Yeah, it's how I see it. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. But we can always discern, have discernment on our influences.
Yeah.
We can choose our influences. For example, if someone's parents are an alcoholic, they might become an alcoholic, or they might not booze at all, because I saw the way my mother, father, whatever was growing up. So I am so, like, you tend to see people go one of 2 directions. They either like become like an influence that might seem bad, or they do the opposite, right? So it's not directly correlated. So, we especially don't want to blame inappropriate behavior on other people, because then we surrender the power for our current choices to somebody else. And the truth is that other person is not there in that moment forcing our hand. But when we tell ourselves this, it reinforces self-deception, because we're responsible for our choices in any moment. And we can change our choices in any moment. Unless,
I do agree with that point, Brendan, because I believe that it also influences the story that you tell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So as you get into that loop of that story, you constantly tell yourself, well, this person, I'm not happy because of this person, or I don't believe this because of this person. I do believe something because of that person. You keep
Mhm.
telling yourself because of that person, ... That becomes its own hypnotic trance. And it reinforces that story and that belief. So even though you're trying to disassociate yourself from that belief, you're actually running towards it instead of running away from it.
Yeah. So this is all about giving up the stories that weaken us and creating new stories that strengthen us. But also, when we do all this stuff, it creates a lot of drama in our life. Right? Because then we persecute other people. You made me do this. So now we've switched to the persecutor position. Or we say, I can't hold on this way because of my mother, my father, and blah, blah. And they make me act this way and they make me upset and they make me believe it. And then you got an enabler like, oh, you're right. None of this is your fault. Right? You have no control over anything in your life. That's where the drama starts to feed off each other. And drama, of course, is a great impediment to human progress and happiness. Right? So, a warrior way to look at this is we are responsible for our actions. Nobody's forcing us to act a certain way. We decide what we do next. Maybe we learned a bad example and we didn't know any better, but we always have the option to make different choices in future when we know better, right? So that's what it comes down to is, things can influence us, but they don't really make us act a certain way, right? Okay. Number four. All right, Patty, there you got to be completely honest with this one. Be completely honest. Score yourself 1 to 5. 1 means almost never. 5 means almost always. Do you ever embellish your stories to get more sympathy and attention? Maybe exaggerate some things, bend and twist the truth. So do we ever do this? This is common with the playing the role of the victim in the drama triangle. And people know that if they can do this, you can get more hidden benefits from playing the victim. People will be like, oh, poor you more if you bend it a little bit more, right? So it's part of that. It's part of the way that human beings manipulate each other a little bit, Embellish.
Also, embellishment doesn't have to also mean increasing the volume of the story. It can also be a lateral movement of changing the narrative of the story slightly, so it was a slightly different flavor. So your story takes on a slightly different strategy, so it seems new, so you gain sympathy from other people by changing your story. Same theme, but your outcome is the same, looking for sympathy.
Exactly. It can be all about reframing things in a way that positions you as a victim. Here's a way people do it. Oftentimes, the person that's started the whole problem and started the whole drama then positions themselves as a victim of the drama and labels somebody else as the bad person, somebody who is really not doing anything bad. And then they embellish that and they play the victim, but really they were the perpetrator. That's a common form of manipulation in drama triangles. The person who is actually playing the role of the villain and started the whole mess quickly asserted themselves as the victim in the whole thing and got everyone on board with their victim stories, and they're all reinforcing it. And meanwhile, somebody else is being targeted, right? So what's the drama stopping truth here? What's the warrior way to look at this? Instead of embellishing stories to get sympathy and attention.
Just get into the meat and potatoes, just give the truth, as opposed to embellishment, just giving the truth.
Yeah. Or that could be good. Or if you want love and attention, there are better ways to get it. That's simple. If you want love and attention, there are better ways to get it than pretending to be a victim and embellishing stories. You're getting it through a negative means. Maybe try being nice to people and make them feel special and uplift them. Try that to get love and attention.
A lot of the times I find that is that sort of like misery likes company or loves company, where they're kind of just trying to bring you down with them in a sense to get you into their narrative, basically pull you into the triangle, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're going to try to pull you in, right? And then they try to pull you in like with the narrative that isn't it so awful, right? Oh, look at the situation in the world, everything going on here and there. Isn't it so awful? They're trying to pull you into a victim narrative with them. The situation is so horrible, right? Going on right now in politics, the world, the country, whatever, right?
So this be like a scenario where you had mentioned where like you want to just flip the script quickly and almost just notice all the good things instead. Like you said, you did that with a woman, and next thing you know, she's laughing with you and completely changed her mind.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're aiming for.
It's kind of like if somebody wants to dance with you, you don't have to dance with them. You say, "Oh no, we're not doing the tango. We're going to do the foxtrot. What's good about this situation? What could be learned? How can you make it better?" Right? I'm like, I'm not doing that dance. That's a horrible dance. You're over doing the chicken dance? Nah, forget it. Let's do something better, right? Like that's really what it comes down to. And the games people play, right? So, if you, and really what it comes down to is if you want to get love and attention, give other people love and attention. Call them up and uplift them. There's way better ways than just getting people to feel bad for you, right? Okay, so that was number 4. Okay.
Well, I think that's also a really good point that people who use this technique to get their needs met are using techniques that they were using when they were kids, and they never really outgrew that. And it shows a very wounded pattern
Yeah.
there. So you really have to look at it from how's this person used to getting his needs? What methods do they usually use?
You're right in that we need to see the innocence in the pattern, which is that, if you fall down and scrape your knee, somebody might come and kiss it better for you when you're a small child. But you might link up in the brain when you want love, put yourself in pain. And then you are finding all kinds of ways to create that wound that you want people to kiss better. And you just learned it got linked up in the brain during childhood. And that's why it's good to kind of examine under the surface some of the rules we're living by, because a lot of times these rules were made by the 5-year-old version of ourselves. And you wouldn't really trust a 5-year-old to be your life coach, would you? Not unless they were a really clever 5-year-old. Okay. So, all right, number 5. So once again, score this 1 to 5, just see where you're at. When people give you feedback, right? Helpful advice on how to be better. When people give you feedback, do you respond by justifying your mistakes or making excuses? Now, I think most people are not great at receiving feedback, because they view it as a personal attack or a judgment that they're not good enough or anything else. They don't see it as a form of redemption and a saving grace. So lots of times people are quickly asserting a defensive position. But, when you receive feedback, do you respond by justifying your mistakes or making excuses? Perhaps blaming outside circumstances. Chris?
It goes beyond just recoiling from the feedback. The question is, are you going to act on the feedback? Are you going to actually incorporate that into your techniques and change your techniques and be different from the criticism? And that's really where you're trying to score yourself. Do I take this criticism and do I give a polite lip service and say, you're absolutely right, I need to own my mistakes and act differently? And then just keep going on doing the same thing. So that's really a 5 score versus someone who says, yeah, I do kind of treat people that way. Let me look up a couple of YouTube videos and see what some psychologists say about this, and then try to incorporate that in and make a conscious effort to change
Mm-hmm.
your behavior.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Warrior mentality, we find a way. Victim mentality, we find an excuse. And that's why so much of it can be rooted in how people even handle feedback. Because when people resist and are defensive on feedback, they're really rebelling against their own redemption when others are trying to help them be better. Right? Warrior mentality is all about taking action.
And I think there's also another good aspect of this when you're talking about stories and lateral movement of stories, is that someone can tell themselves a warrior story, but their action is still that of a victim.
Yeah. Lots of people are very skillful in their self-deception. I mean, most people don't think of themselves as victims when they are plunged in victim mentality. They think of themselves as being very accurate in their point of view of themselves.
So yeah, I was just gonna say a lot to do with ego here. And they feel like their ego is being attacked as they get advice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the truth is, like, we're responsible for what we do. We can face truth, learn from it, and handle what comes next. That's the warrior way to look at it. How else are we going to get better? We should be grateful for feedback. It helps us see our hidden blind spots. We all have unconscious incompetence, things we do wrong that we don't know about, right? People take a risk when they give us feedback. Rather than making them feel stupid by justifying and making excuses, we should first assume that we're wrong and they're right, because they're engaging in risky behavior. It's easy to give flattery and praise. You usually get rewarded back for it. When you get feedback, normally people punish you. They turn the table and they say, well, what about you and this and that? So the key is to realize it can be a saving grace, feedback. Okay, number 6. Do you ever feel angry, depressed, or resentful about your circumstances? 1 to 5. Do you ever feel angry, depressed, or resentful about your circumstances? These emotions can be symptomatic of victim mentality, an inability to accept and embrace the reality of our life right now, to assume that it is all happening to us, not for our benefit. And that's the often quoted Tony Robbins line is, rather than life is happening to me, see how life is happening for me, right? What really matters? What we're going through in the moment, or who we ultimately become as a result of what we've gone through? Right? We can focus on how our experiences give us the opportunity to evolve and realize our potential. And what else are we here for? Are we here to try to fight and stay the same? Or are we here to self-realize? Anyone have any thoughts on this one? Patty, any thoughts?
No, I don't really have anything to add.
I'm trying to think of the best way to sort of help people with that circumstance. They feel angry, depressed, and whatnot. And what's sort of the best flip switch, or maybe non-approach, tough love approach? I suppose it's individualized too, right?
You could just say maybe there's some higher meaning for everything you're going through right now.
Okay.
After all, take a look at the biggest turning points in your life. The times when good things fell apart. You couldn't see in the moment how it was going to lead to something better, but it ultimately did. Maybe it was a job that fell apart, or a relationship, but ultimately led to something better. The key is to not judge the moment, but trust the big picture. It's just maybe there's some higher meaning for what you're going through right now. maybe the wisdom and love of the universe knows exactly what you need and the most efficient way to bring it into your life. And that what's happening now is exactly what is needed to happen for your highest good.
Maybe if you're not listening, you get bonked over the head even harder.
If you don't listen the first time, the lesson comes back more intensely. Of course. Of course. So those are some healthy ways to look at it. All right, number 7. Do you ever tell yourself, I can't figure this out and I've tried everything? Do you ever tell yourself, I can't figure this out and I've tried everything? Score it 1 to 5. 1 means almost never. 5 means you do this all the time, almost always. I can't figure this out and I've tried everything. Why?
It's so funny.
It sounds like a common phrase. Have you heard say this in life? Like, this is common vernacular in the human experience, right?
I only do it with technology, I realized. Everything else is pretty good, but that thing that doesn't work, and I downloaded the firmware, is it? I tried everything! That's the only thing that gets to me, I think. That's funny.
Yeah.
As soon as you said it, I'm like, yeah, that's when I would say that. That's pretty much it.
Now, here's the thing. We tell ourselves this, we narrate our life like this.
Oh, yeah, true say.
But is it actually true that we've tried everything? It's almost never true, right?
To say that you've tried everything is asking yourself to dig deeper into action, into uncomfortable action and uncomfortable thinking. Thinking that's actually painful because it's beyond your normal personality. The answer to your problem is beyond what you've done. So it requires a lot of focus and a lot of discomfort to get to that point to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to say we've tried everything and can't figure it out, we are affirming limitation instead of affirming positive possibilities, which is a way in which we will surrender our power and play the victim again.
Exactly. So you have to dig deeper to find more action than you've already found.
Yeah. Yeah. So a warrior way to look at this might be everything is figure outable with patience, research, and changing our approach. There's always a solution, even if our solution is to just change our mindset about it. Right? So, there was somebody I was talking to who had an incurable physical ailment, right? And, we can't really, they've tried lots of things to make it better. And the science and research and historical precedent is that this thing doesn't get better, right? So what did we do? Rather than seeing this ailment as an enemy, we tried to see how it's actually like a friend. How, because of this ailment, you see the outpouring of love and support from family and friends who are there for you and everything else, and how this ailment has brought new wisdom and new experiences and new people into your life. And we kind of like embrace, and then that brought peace. That was the solution, to just look at it different. It wasn't a practical changing things externally. The solution here was to just change things on the inside. So,
Tony Robbins says that, being in a resourceful state, a state of resourcefulness.
yes, he says there's no lack of resources, just resourcefulness. And I love that line. And he's very big on I noticed like the majority of his stuff is going after victim mentality, right? Empowerment is what he's teaching. He's got great concepts and teachings that have been very inspirational to a lot of our conversation even here today. All right, now let's go on to the next one. Do you ever tell yourself, I have no control over my situation? Have you ever heard anyone say, I have no control over my situation? Then I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got this family issue, or I've got this boyfriend and blah, blah. And he's like, he's like this and he's like that, and I have no control over my situation. It's like, or I'm in this, I'm in an arranged marriage. I have no control over my situation, right? Why is it a bad idea to think this way?
Your subconscious mind is directed towards being helpless and not looking for resources or ideas to find a solution. Your brain's just come to a complete stop. We're helpless. So it ends the line of thinking. But if you're resourceful enough and you're thinking of a solution, you'll try different things, fail at different things, try different things, fail at different things. But then you'll develop progress towards that answer.
Yeah.
But if you say you're helpless, that code doesn't even start.
Yeah, you don't see the control you have because you aren't even looking for it. You've already quit. So Viktor Frankl, who authored Man's Search for Meaning, had emphasized, through his story, he basically described that when external circumstances restrict our freedoms, our inner freedom is still under our control. And it's where we hold the power to shape our thoughts, direct our focus, choose our outlook, guide our actions, and make informed decisions. We can embrace inner control for it. That's the true essence of true freedom. Right? He was in the Auschwitz Nazi concentration camp. They had taken away everything, his family, his clothing, like his business, all of his possessions, and he's living amidst the horrors of the Nazi concentration camp. But he had the control to change what this experience meant to him. And he had envisioned one day speaking in front of a large lecture hall and telling people about it. And that gave him greater meaning and purpose for what he was going through. They couldn't take away his ability to create that meaning and purpose. So that's the truth. We always have our inner freedom under our control. How about number 9? Let's go into this. Do you ever tell yourself, I don't have what it takes, things never work out, I always end up failing?
I definitely, not to be like it's never me, but I do see these qualities in people that I come in contact with, but I always have a lot of, personally, like a perseverance mentality. Like I just always enjoy finding a way, or like figuring out a puzzle, or like finding a way to break through. Like to me, that's kind of the fun in life, is to, I don't know, be a problem solver. Like, and I'm not saying like I don't ever, the place where I scored myself as like a 2, would be like, yeah, I mean, depression sometimes, gets the better of us, and then you get into this like loop that isn't healthy. Or sometimes I realize that, with everybody else, I don't, I forget the very first one you did, but it's like a circumstance, but definitely with my wife, sometimes I notice that I will I'll look at the situation differently in that scenario. But yeah, in general, a lot of the questions, where it's just kind of not taking responsibility for it. Like, I've just never found that to be helpful. I always, there's always a way, or, if there isn't a way, like at least you can try your best to do your best.
Yes. Love it. Love it. So, what I'm hearing a lot of here is it's like, look, when we tell ourselves this, we're dishonoring who we truly are. If we say, I don't have what it takes, things never work out, I always end up failing. And, try your best to do your best is really, we need to remember that we are highly capable learners with an immeasurable amount of untapped potential within us. So who knows what we're capable of when we are maximally motivated? People would shock themselves with what they're capable of achieving and doing in their lives once they're maximally motivated. So why would we affirm a quitter's mentality? I don't have what it takes, things never work out, I always end up failing. Right? We're pretending to be so much less than what we actually are. And that's all about embracing that warrior mentality. It's like, who knows what I'm capable of when I try my best? I'm just going to try my best and find out. What an exciting journey this will be. Excellent. Well said, Joel. Well said. All right. How about we go on to number 10? Do you ever tell yourself there's not enough of what I need available? Whether it's money, time, attention, love, opportunity, or whatever. Do you ever tell yourself there's not enough of what I need available? Money, time, attention, love, opportunity, or whatever. And, you know, why is it a bad idea to do this?
I would say because you lack that feeling of being content, right? Instead, you feel like you always got you got more, got to get more, got to need more. I didn't get enough.
Exactly. So it's affirming scarcity mentality, which is a persistent focus on what's missing instead of a persistent focus on what we have to be grateful for right now. So we can always get more and more and more, and it'll just never be enough. You know, they might say, for example, achievement. You might get more and more achievement, and it's just never enough.
There's also, if you think about the law of attraction, if you keep focusing on what you don't have or the lack of it, you get more of that.
Yeah.
So if you tell yourself that you don't have those resources or you don't have enough of X, you focus on not having enough X, and hence you get even less of it, and it becomes its own spiral because you're attracting less of it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing you can do is to focus on having more of it, even as counterintuitive as it may be in the moment. It'll start you in the opposite direction, which you need to start going, at least start to attract it.
You're right. A growth mindset is much more beneficial to us than a scarcity mindset. A scarcity mindset, the only payoff might be sympathy from other people. You know, so a warrior way to look at this might be that, you know, it's important to focus on gratitude and realize that we have the resources and ability to create more of what we need in our life. This will help us to be more resourceful and find ways and look for ways to achieve our goals. You know, all we need is within us now. The resources we require reside within us, ready to be harnessed, to just fully dedicate ourselves to creating more of what we need in life. Excellent. Well said, Chris. Okay. Here's one. Number 11. I can't change. This is who I am. Have you ever heard anyone say this, especially after they've been acting in an unwholesome manner? You know, have we ever said this? So score yourself 1 to 5. Have you ever said this? You know, like 1 would mean almost never, 2 occasionally, about half the time, fairly often, almost always. I can't change. This is who I am.
Sounds like a great way to escape responsibility. Wasn't me. Can't change. It's me. What do you want?
We let ourselves off the hook for taking responsibility for our effect in the world.
We let ourselves off the hook for changing. Hence, if I'm going to just be myself, I've let myself off the hook to have to change, to put in that effort, to have that growth, to put in the conscious effort to grow. If I let myself off the hook by saying, I'm just this way, or I can't change, or that's another way of saying, I can't change, right? This is just how I am. you're letting yourself off the hook of that growth. And that sometimes is more comfortable, safer, but you will not get the growth that you need to solve the problem that's in front of you and in front of the warrior. All
Yeah.
these,
And I would even argue that it appears more comfortable and safer, but it brings much more pain and discomfort to
Pain.
stay that way. It is just a false illusion that this is the comfortable path to stay the same. I say the
it's
comfort
easy,
is to transcend, rise above our circumstances and limitations.
I'm not sure who said this, but someone once said it's easier to make bad habits than it is to make good habits that will stick and be more beneficial. Bad habits are less beneficial but easier to make. Good habits are harder to create, but there's much more benefit.
There we go.
I would say most of the time you're not really thinking about, you know what bad habit I'm going to start this week? I'm going to do it for a full year, right? Like that's probably the main reason it's an issue. You're not aware of it until it's holding you captive.
Oh my God, I would be the best coach ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our bad habits are based on impulsiveness, whim, and short-sighted thinking. So we have to really,
And dopamine.
all right, number 12. Number 12 is another one where people will get really triggered and reactive at the suggestion that this isn't a good idea. All right, it's a very polarizing victim mentality statement. Here's what it is. Do you ever find yourself wanting to be in a bad or lousy mood and deciding to embrace it? Just suggesting that people can control this gets a lot of people triggered and reactive.
Well, it's almost like people feel entitled, like they've earned it or something.
Yeah, like it's a virtue. Oh no, you're supposed to be in your bad emotions and your own this and blah blah blah, and you need to be selfish and you need to blah blah blah. Anyway, I've heard it all, and it's all just victim mentality masquerading as something more elevated, but still it's just victim mentality. So people just become very self-determined in their victim mentality. Now, why is it a bad idea to do this?
Becomes a habit.
Yeah, and isn't managing our emotions one of the keys to success in life, in all things, business, relationships, and everything?
Do you really mean managing your emotions, or do you really mean managing your actions?
Well, I mean, you take a look at how well do people act in a social situation when they're in a bad mood compared to being in a good mood? How well do you relate to others? How is your creativity when you're how rational are you in a good mood compared to when you're in a really bad mood, right? I think emotions can predetermine actions to a large degree. When people aren't at their best emotionally, they don't act at their best.
No, not at all. The two are connected.
Right? Like being in a bad mood, it's like throwing a skunk into the middle of the room. It stinks for yourself and it stinks for everybody else. Right? Oh, yeah, I love it. I love it. So, here's what it comes down to. That a lot of people don't realize suffering is not always necessary. We have the ability to discern which is necessary and which is not. Sure, a loved one passes away, grieve, go through the process. That can be necessary suffering. Okay? But, just because somebody said something small to you at work doesn't mean you have to let it ruin your whole day and be in a bad mood and take it out on other people, right? So it comes down to discernment. That is the key. We can minimize unnecessary suffering in our lives by increasing wisdom and making better choices. That is powerful to embrace that truth. We can discern what suffering is necessary, what is not. We can minimize unnecessary suffering through wisdom. Huge, huge for people. But a lot of times people would rather just sit around and feel bad. That's the reality of victim mentality, right? And that brings a lot of drama, and you can see how this starts to get triangulated with a persecutor and and a rescuer. All right.
Talking,
What's that, Chris?
talking about this part, I picture like a tow truck trying to pull a car out of a ditch. That a tow truck is trying, you're trying to get someone to get out of their comfort zone, out of the ditch. And you do have a tow truck that can tow them out of there, but sometimes they do not want to be towed. They're happy in their ditch at that time. At some point, they will want to get out of their ditch, just maybe not at the time that you're there or the time that you can offer that help to be the tow truck. They're going to wait for another tow truck.
Yep.
I picture it more as like somebody touching a hot stove and be like, well, it did burn last time, but maybe it won't burn this time. And like, oh, nope, still burns. Well, maybe next time it won't burn. Well, nope, still burns.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So slowly come to learn these things.
I'm finding that as you're asking these questions, some of these higher numbers that are coming out, because you have the persecutor and the rescuer ultimately become victims at some point in the triangle, depending upon what the drama is that's being created in the moment, that some of these areas are higher than others for the rescuer, who then becomes the victim, or the persecutor, who then becomes the victim.
Yes. You are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. A rescuer might think, I don't have what it takes. Things never work out. I always end up failing because I tried to rescue this situation and, or I can't figure this out and I've tried everything. Right? A persecutor might feel angry, depressed, or resentful about their circumstances, and so they take it out on people. A persecutor might think, other people made me act this way. Right? Or other people made me mad, and so I have to put them in their place with my persecutions. You're right. You're right. Some of these are going to be more relevant than others.
And like the question about, do you exaggerate, your circumstance, for example? Well, of course, the persecutor is going to be high on that exaggeration scale, because they do that because they're in the midst of persecuting by saying always and never and, all of these things. But at the end, that's also a trait of being a victim. So they overlap depending upon where they are in the drama triangle and on what cycle that they're on, if they're persecuting or victim, right?
Yep. Yeah. And you might look at a persecutor as a victim that lacks compassion. And it's the lack of compassion which predisposes them to taking everything out on everybody else. Because nothing is their fault. They're not in the wrong. They see themselves in a way as they're better than others, right? So anyway, let's go on to the next one. And then thank you. Stop me and bring up anything you guys want to add at any point in the conversation, please. Number 13. This one's a biggie. Because this is the one mentality. This one gets people stuck and they don't see it. It's just not on the radar. Do you ever tell yourself, I have difficulty knowing what I want, what I need, or how I feel? Do you ever tell yourself, I have difficulty knowing what I want, what I need, or how I feel? Like, I don't know what I need. I don't know what I want. I don't know how I feel. Do you ever do any of that stuff? Right? So, and why is this a bad idea? You know, this is all about a lack of clarity.
I was just gonna say self-awareness, right?
So this attitude leads to complacency in lack of clarity. We embrace confusion as an end destination. So a lot of people will just like surrender. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I need. And then they stay stuck in their problem rather than trying to find a way out. And a lot of times it's not true, because a lot of times the real answer isn't the answer they want to hear. So they reject it every time they hear it. And they find creative ways to reject the actual solution.
And that's sometimes when seeing a therapist for a long time helps, because they can put that same message in front of them so frequently for such a long period of time that idea of being able to get yourself unstuck starts to become more reasonable, because they're hearing it more frequently over a longer period of time, that can overcome the older original message.
I love that you brought that up, because the warrior way to look at this is, I can find a way to figure out what I want, need, or feel, and I can get help to do that if I need it. I can gain clarity through a coach, a therapist, a wise mentor. These people are experts at helping you identify your feelings, understand what needs to be done next, and classify your desires and everything else. Right? We can figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
If we're motivated.
Absolutely. Yes, if you're motivated to do so, but there is, like you said, protection when you don't have that clarity, again, because it lets you off the hook. So you don't have to take those actions to be responsible for yourself, which is totally opposite of what the victim mentality is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take the mantle of this question and push it forward with the tow truck, so that you can start with yourself, to start with what do you need, what is going to help you find your way through personally. But if your head is in the sand and you're hiding from it, you can't work on it if you're hiding from it.
Yep.
But once you find it and you get some action on it, and you get some progress moving the needle, it gets a little bit easier. And that's sustained momentum of pushing that needle, of focusing in on what you want, who you want to be, what actions you have to take, what are you willing to do to be that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's when you need the mentors and the helpers to help you get through that, because you may not be able to do that on your own. But there are people out there willing to help you do that if you ask, and if you know how to ask.
Absolutely. And it takes strength to do that. Right? So love it. Love it. So why don't we go on to number 14? Do you ever compare yourself to others who seem to be better off and tell yourself it's not fair? Do you ever compare yourself to others who seem to be better off and tell yourself it's not fair?
I usually don't go in the it's not fair deal, but I look at it that they made different decisions and different sacrifices than I have.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's quite the same as saying it's not fair as a blanket statement.
It's not fair. That would be you're recognizing that people have made struggles and sacrifices that may not be evident on the surface. That's a mature way to look at it. Right?
Yeah.
Now, this attitude can really discourage us and bring us down. And it's comparison. And a warrior way to look at it could be to be grateful for all we have. You know, the only comparing we should really do is comparing against who we were yesterday, because to compare is unfair. But when we're doing this, what we're not doing is counting our blessings. Right? So it's rooted in it. forces in gratitude.
I've always liked that comparison is a thief of joy.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think it was like Roosevelt or somebody said that. I don't know. I don't remember. Who.
It's in my phone somewhere. I've said it for years. I really liked it. Comparison is the thief of joy, because you find people that are so unhappy comparing and comparing and comparing. And I guess that's why it kind of stuck to me. And I try not to really try, for sure.
Yeah. I remember that quote, and I know like a million quotes, so I probably got the source wrong.
Oh, nice.
I think it was
Fine.
Roosevelt, but I was like, oh, I think I know that one. But yeah, totally right. It's and I think personally, I think my biggest vice is ingratitude. Ingratitude. The more that I've lived and tried to be mindful, the more I realize there is so much more to be grateful for in my experience that I've overlooked or haven't seen or haven't even paid attention to. And the more I go looking for it, the more I find that I've taken for granted in all aspects of my life. You know, like everything, the powers of digestion, my immune system that's fighting for me all day long. I don't even have the capacity to be grateful for everything I should be grateful for. I suffer ingratitude. That's my biggest vice. I'm convinced of it. Because I just don't think I'm capable of even being mindful of everything I could possibly be grateful for. And I think we are all blessed beyond what we can possibly count. But the more we focus on that, the more encouraged we are. The more we realize we've been loved and protected and guided in so many ways that are beyond our everyday awareness. And that can give us courage and strength. And that can be a warrior way to look at things because it powers us up.
The
All right,
action of gratitude is pleasurable. The action of gratitude is joy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, the next one is this. Final one for the baggage here is, do you ever act as though life is a harsh and dangerous place and you need to be in survival mode? You know, you got to be tough to survive or whatever it is. You know, so, I mean, this attitude can lead to a negative worldview. Which can bring us down, very simply, on the surface. But furthermore, I think to add to my whole ingratitude piece is that, you know, if we're going to focus on the bad, we should be fair and focus on the good in life and all the love and goodness of the world and all of the ways in which we are blessed and supported, which goes beyond measure. You know, focusing on the positive aspects of life and the love that supports us. You know, we were all at one point, all of us, and anyone watching this recording, we were nothing but a single-celled organism inside our mother. Okay? Completely helpless and fragile. And all of our needs were met the whole time in ways that we don't even remember or couldn't even possibly perceive. I don't even think now we even got it all figured out, but it was until we grew and grew and grew. And, you know, and even to this day, our needs truly have all been met. We've been growing and changing and supported in countless ways. You know, we are like fish in the ocean. We are just swimming in love and support. We just may not pay attention to it. We may take it for granted because it's so prevalent in our reality. You know, so it's important to have discernment on what we focus on, because what we focus on shapes our reality and ultimately our experience of life. And so if we focus on thinking of life and telling ourselves the story that this world is a harsh and dangerous place, you need to be in survival mode. Like, think about the kind of person that makes you become very combative, seeing threats everywhere. And it can be a very distorted worldview. If you're going to focus on what's kind of threatening in this world, you should be fair and also focus on what has been very beneficial and good and loving in this world. and balance it out. Anyone else have any thoughts on that one?
I
So,
think it speaks to your world view. And I think really, as if you take a look at each of these questions, it's like building a storyboard almost.
mhm,
And I think this is like more towards the end of the panels where this is kind of like when you kind of dial up to like the 30,000 feet and looking at everything globally. And your global view has much more of an effect, I think, than people give it credit for. And it does affect how you see things, how you even feel things that are even far away from you. So cue, even subtle body language cues, language cues, things of that nature.
yeah,
So I think that's really what this question really speaks to is your sensitivity to your world view and how your body responds to it and how your thoughts respond to it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we've discussed the 15 components that kind of predispose us to victim mentality. Here's the most important question. People come up with all kinds of reasons and justifications and excuses to stay in victim mentality. Here's the most important question you need to answer if you're experiencing that resistance. Do you want to be happy? Yes or no? It is that simple. Do you want to be happy? Yes or no? Because if you want to be happy, you're going to have to find a way to reclaim your power in life. You're never going to find happiness surrendering your power, right? And you might tell yourself a million excuses on why you're a victim and this and that and everything else. But the point is that when you really want to take your life to the next level, you have to make that choice. That instead of defending and justifying a lot of these mentalities, that you're just going to change your mentality to get you closer to what you want in life and to get to the next level. Because ultimately, if you just want to be happy, this is what you've got to do.
So someone says they have an addiction, but it's what makes them happy. And if life's about what makes them happy, then it should be okay. What would you say?
Well, I would say that what we're doing is if it's positioned that way, I'd say there's no real satisfying answer. But I would say that if we are to break it down, that there's a difference between real long-term happiness and fleeting surface level excitement.
Okay.
Then now what we're doing is if you really want to be happy, you're going to learn to discern between quality happiness. You might be able to take a hit of a drug and experience a quick surface level high, and then you're left with feelings of being lousy and being withdrawn and making poor decisions in life. That if you really want to be an expert at happiness, you will eventually value and prioritize real long-term happiness rather than surface level excitement.
I like that. Change the definition of happiness.
Yeah. And I really like that you brought that up, because that is a very challenging objection.
That's what I got. I was like, see.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've had to give a good think about that one in particular.
Okay.
So yeah, we have to go to war with victim thinking, right? You got to catch it, challenge it, break it down. Am I generalizing? Am I exaggerating? Is it really true? And then correct it. You can correct it like, how is this situation challenging me to be better? How am I responsible? How can I make it better? So it's kind of like, and you can find a way instead of finding an excuse. That's it. If you want to boil down the whole conversation on victim mentality, find a way instead of finding an excuse. You'll realize you found your way through hard times before in your life. You can do it again. Whatever's in front of you is probably nothing compared to what's already behind you that you've gone through in your life. Call yourself out and ask others to do the same until lasting change is achieved. it is really there through sheer habit. Right? So we have to really treat this with life-threatening intensity, catching, challenging, and correcting our victim mentalities. Because it really is life-threatening. It is the funeral of your higher potential if you indulge in this stuff. That's a big deal. The funeral of your higher potential. You've come a long way since being that one little single-celled organism. You know? So let's conclude the drama triangle. Here is the drama escape plan. Okay. So we kind of talked about all the different roles here. Persecutor was another talk, rescuer was another talk. Today was all about victim. All right. The way to really get out of this, I've got it down to 8 steps. 8 steps. Step 1, okay, unpack what is going on. Identify the facts of the situation and gather any missing information you might need. Really unpack what is going on. Okay. Number 2, ensure everyone else involved has the info they need and is willing to receive it. Sometimes they don't want to receive the info. Sometimes they want to do the drama. I've asked people point blank, do you want to get to the truth of matters or do you just want to be right? And I've had them say, I just want you to be wrong as a response. Like, okay, well, I'm not even going to bother unpacking truth because I'm not going to bother presenting evidence because people will be persistent in distorting the truth that is shown in the plain of day. So you got to, consider that. Now, number 3, seek advice from a coach, counselor, or trusted mentor. Get some outside perspective on this. Okay, often you can't see the forest from the trees. Number 4, to the degree in which you're capable and people are willing to receive what you have to say, address the situation by educating others on the negative effects of the drama triangle. Hey, look, here's a handout on the drama triangle. Here's some videos you can watch. Can you see how it's a bad idea? These things go around and around and nothing ever gets solved. It becomes draining and just creates pain and suffering. Nothing it resists change and it resists evolution. Number 5 is communicate clearly and directly about what you want and what needs to be done to resolve the issue. Just know that when you're setting boundaries and negotiating for a reconciliation, people might make you the bad guy and vilify you and call you demanding and dismiss everything, but at least you've done your part.
Or a complainer.
Yeah, exactly. That's usually what they'll do. They'll persecute you. They'll find a way to persecute you because that's more dramatic and they love the drama. Number 6, learn to accept being labeled the bad person and avoid engaging in any further drama. The minute you exit a drama triangle, they start to make up stories about you. They will say that you are intentionally hurting the people in the drama triangle by removing yourself from their life. You'd say, oh, Patty hurt this person or that person, or Dave hurt this person or that person because now they're ignoring them or they haven't forgiven them, and they'll make up some story. That's textbook. And they will really try to press your buttons to get you involved. It's like a vending machine. When you press your button, you put in the money, you press the button, and it doesn't give you the food that you paid for, then you start pressing any button you can to try to get anything. That's what people will do with you when you exit the drama triangle. They're going to try to press any button they can. Number 7, stay away from situations and people that tend to create drama. Okay, if you want to avoid conflict, avoid being around the people who always seem to be in a conflict of some sort. All right? Avoid politics, dogmatic religions, the news, dramatic people, etc. And then number 8, I'd say this. Remember that the drama triangle roles are not fixed identities and that you have the power to choose how to respond to any situation. Use past experiences as a motivation for personal growth and development. Just realize that this whole experience, as Chris West says in his book, the drama triangle does us a favor by showing us how not to live. It really motivates and teaches us how to live. Right? Take responsibility, have compassion instead of negative judgment, and all the rest of it. So that is the drama triangle. And, if you find yourself in a drama triangle, it can be good to watch the series of video discussions we've done on it to help these insights sink in so you know it in your bones. Read the books written by many of the great authors out there who have written about drama triangles. There's tons of resources available once we decide we've had enough of the drama. Realize the folly of playing the drama. It is so much better to just live in truth and live in our power than to do this thing. Right? So, final thoughts, key takeaways, anything else you want to add? Chris, why don't we start with you?
I discovered how tiring it can actually be playing the victim role. And that's a lot of energy to stay stuck in one position.
Yeah.
And you can actually use that energy. I think what's nice about these conversations that this also offers some cognitive behavioral therapy in a way, that as you see how the other parts are played and you're understanding the rules of the system, you can now manipulate those rules of the system to remove yourself from those roles. Now that you see what the job description looks like, you can now catch yourself playing those job descriptions.
Clarity brings power. Awareness itself can have a curative effect.
Yes.
Love it. Okay, Joel, over to you.
I think it's really helpful. This is kind of a really big conversation. Obviously, we've done this over a lot of meetings. I think it's really helpful to realize, regardless of where someone's at in the triangle, how to get out of it. I guess what the warning signs are, and especially I related a lot to trying to be like the helper that wants to help people, but sometimes you're just enabling things, and how to help people. And that's what I really want to do in life with helping the homeless, is really help people to basically empower themselves to get out of where they're at and embolden things and rise above it. But yeah, kind of like Chris said, it's crazy once you start realizing how much this permeates a lot of society, and it's just not. It's not necessary. So I guess self-awareness is always the first step to fixing something, right? You have to realize that it's a problem to fix it. So, yeah, I think it's been a really helpful topic, and it's also helpful to me in the specific pursuits that I want to do. But also, I think it should be helpful to a lot of people just seeing kind of some of the telltale signs, and if you want to change, how to change it.
Yeah. Much gratitude to those who have mapped this out, Dr. Stephen Cartman and Chris West and Barry and Janae Weinhold. And there's a lot of people that have mapped this out, and thank goodness they did. It makes it so much easier when you have some sort of a map, because it can just be it can just seem like a labyrinth to try to find your way out of this drama stuff until you gain clarity. Clarity brings power once you know the roles, how those roles are functioning, what the tricks are, what the persecutor's playbook is, how the victim stays stuck in the victim, and what their roles and lines are. You can it's like being in a chess match, you can anticipate their moves.
Well, and again, it presupposes that you want to change because, like we've talked about, some people feel like they're getting their needs met by being a victim because it gets them attention or makes them feel connection or love or however that satisfies it. But obviously, that's not necessarily the highest sense of being, and getting out of that cycle can be much more, satisfying and empowering in the long term, even if it's discomfort, in the short term.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things to realize is that we're all in a spiritual school here on planet Earth, and we're all at different grade levels. And sometimes people are running their experiments with this stuff. They're trying it out and taking it for a test drive. They're going to test drive victim mentality, and then they realize it's not a good idea. There you go. You've done that. Sometimes people will test drive persecutor mentality and realize, I need to persecute the idea of being a persecutor, right? Because it doesn't bring me happiness and fulfillment. It doesn't solve anything. And then other people, God bless them, they have a good heart, good intentions. They might end up playing the rescuer role and realizing, well, I'm just learning how to love people better by learning how to help them reclaim their strength rather than trying to do everything for them or whatever it is, right? So these are all just lessons in the great school of life. Hootsie patootie.
You'd like this one, buddy. I drew a picture of a heart and I put victim in it. And then each bicep is persecutor and rescuer. Just because it seems like the victim is the main mentality. The victim is literally the bottom bubble, and it just exerts itself in these few ways. You've mentioned that before. You always kind of come back to victim. They are always playing victim, but switching to persecutor and rescuer, which I like. I found that kind of helpful to understand how it works. So they always want to go back to. And then, of course, like this could be a longer conversation, but I was just curious. I thought, because we also kind of dissected that pride is the worst sin, and how does that leak its way into how a victim is a victim very deep in pride, and that's where their needs being met comes from, and they have certain, I don't know. I just found it kind of an interesting carryover.
I would say that if we're to relate it to the 7 deadly sins, persecutor is very much pride.
Okay.
Right? They're very proud. Right? They see themselves as superior and better. Victim mentality is more sloth.
Okay.
It's lacking the motivation to take meaningful action. It's procrastinating. It's indulging in distractions instead of forward progress in life.
Okay.
I'd say it's sloth will tend to lead more to that one there.
Cool.
Right? Which one do you think rescuer is?
That's what I'm trying to think right now. I guess I don't know.
I know which one it tends to be.
Let's see.
I'll give you a clue. Okay. There's lust. My goodness, I hope it's not lust.
Yeah.
Gluttony, probably not. Greed,
Yeah.
probably not. Wrath, probably not. Wrath could be persecutor.
I was thinking that too, actually. And rescuer.
Envy, it can sometimes be envy, but most often it's pride.
It's
Taking
pride too. Okay.
Taking pride in being needed and significant, even though we're not actually helping the situation. It's more about our ability to help rather than are we actually helping in a way that's helpful. It's a little bit of the pride, because humility, we realize hey, I'm just not advanced enough to help this situation, but somebody else might be. Right? Or with pride, we think I have to do things for people because they're not capable of figuring it out on their own. So I have to come in and rescue them in the situation. Pride. Yeah.
I like it. Thank you. Yeah, I was curious about that when I was looking at them. I wonder what they're dominated by. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's a persecutor. Wrath is a big one with persecutor, because that's the way that they
That makes so much sense.
easily hold grudges and they get reactive. So that's that. And yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I liked your last question there was act as though dangerous place is the world is in a dangerous place. I'm like, well, of course, if they think the world's an apocalypse, it's easy to be a victim. It's like, oh, the world's falling, the world's burning.
Yeah, and then you can justify doing all kinds of harsh behavior as a matter of survival.
Yeah, exactly.
Life is a hard place, and you got to be the toughest person. the toughest SOB out there to survive. So if anyone gets in your way and threatens you, you got to tear them down.
Yeah.
Like that's the persecutor mentality. And it's rooted in the whole life is a harsh and dangerous place worldview. That's why I got to soften people up on that, because like, oh, you're going to persecute people to no end because you think it's a matter of survival and it's not. You just told yourself that it is. That's another story. The story behind the story. How many layers deep does this?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else, Cootsy?
But I made a ton of notes here, bud, just because I have some application needed at some point here. But and also for me too, like when I looked at these numbers, I found the coolest part was being like, maybe a 2, but I used to be a 4. Or like, you know what I mean? Like just knowing that like when I was younger, that for sure. Yep. Oh, well, I've done that, been there. And like, so it's nice to see. And a lot of these, you've handed me that ego checklist years ago. It kind of put some of them in check for sure. But it's nice seeing that they're not as high as I think they should be, or they used to be, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Love it. Love it. All right. Patty, over to you. Final thoughts on the drama triangle and everything about it and all the rest of it.
Well, I've not been quiet about the fact that I was in a drama triangle in the form of a romantic relationship. And so I have some pretty personal experience. I think all of this sounds really good as we're talking about it without putting examples behind it. It keeps it kind of clinical. But the first 3 months I was in a relationship, I was not introduced to the children. I wasn't introduced to workplace. I wasn't introduced to friends. And so all I really had was my relationship with this man. So there's no drama, right? And he's feeling the peace in it, but he's also keeping me out of the drama until he feels safe enough that he can begin to introduce. But in order to introduce, now he has to tell me, well, this part I lied. I really have 4 wives, not really 2. I had 4 ex-wives and I have 6 kids, but one of them was with a lover while I was married to this number 2, right? And so now he's having to push all of this around because he's actually falling in love with a woman that he can't keep this facade up for too long. So now we've gotten past that. He says there is no more. He's ashamed of his past. But as I begin seeing him interact with different people, friends, coworkers, kids, he's a different person everywhere. He's persecuting the ex-wives. He's persecuting, big industry, whatever it is, government, because he worked within a government setting. He was in a very rescuer type job as a firefighter. He changed careers so that he could begin to do that. So he was the mayor of the base, so there were a lot of things that he was doing in a very rescuer mentality. So the first 3 months, the next 3 months, what? And then finally, the last 3 months was, we better get our shit together if this relationship's going to work. And how can we begin to make this happen? And, you gave these 8 steps, but really, at the end of the day, once you come to the realization something's not right, number 2, you look at it, you try to fix it because you're like, do you realize from an outside perspective how dysfunctional this is? I mean, I don't know how many other ways to say dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional. He goes, oh, I know. I'm trying to get it fixed. I'm rescuing over here. I'm rescuing over there. And then he's persecuting this one and persecuting that one. I'm trying to get this right. And so now you want to help. So you're trying to rescue him. You're trying to rescue your partner in the midst of it. And you're like, that's not working. So then you're persecuting him, right? And then you're like, what are you doing? And then finally you're like, I'm the victim of this relationship. It's not until you can step out of it with a coach or a counselor, as you had already said, that you come to a place to realize this is a drama triangle. You just got sucked into it. But the root of it stems from childhood and needs not being met in a healthy way. For him, his need was female approval. And he was getting the female approval from me But then when you began to look at all the other relationships, that's where he was getting female approval at work, with friendships here and there, and he couldn't satiate it. So he was rescuing every woman that he found, and he was rescuing all of his daughters, persecuting his sons. I mean, it was ridiculous. So the dysfunction of it, you can never get out of it and be and have a healthy breakup with something like that. You're going to end up being, the bad person in the deal. You're going to be the complainer. You're going to be the one that's created all the issue. And you just have to say, hey, I have low interest in being in the relationship. And so I'm needing to set some boundaries. Bye-bye. And then don't walk away from it. Run. And set the boundary to be done with it. Because you cannot win in drama triangles. All you can do is rescue yourself at the end of the day.
Well, amazing. And I love the way that you ended it with rescue yourself. Wow, so good. So good. And such a great cautionary tale, essentially a tale of manipulation, because that's what it is. It's misrepresentation, right? Like, oh,
Always.
I don't believe in lying, but I lied to you because I have to, because I'm a victim in my situation. You wouldn't want to be with me if you knew the truth, so I had to lie. It's like, hold on. Like, right there is such a horrible premise. You can't build a relationship on a lie to begin with, right? Like,
And I will also end with this last comment. I really appreciate because of your own personal experience, Brendan, in a drama triangle, how you have researched exhaustively and brought this content, not only for us, but I am so grateful for it. And I'm also grateful for the relationship that I had with that man that went south, and for the understanding that my counselor had given me. I went to 3 sessions and that was it. Once I got all that out, she was like, oh my gosh, get out. And so, but she says, you're okay. The whole relationship dynamic's wrong and you need to get out of it because you're becoming unhealthy in the midst of being in it. And so that was all I needed to hear, was an outside perspective that wasn't inside of it, because you can't hear. So I'm grateful for the platform that's been given here, not only because of your own drama triangle that you were in and how you managed to get out of it, but also for mine, so that I can share it with others. It's made me a better person, made me recognize things more quickly, and be able to share here for others.
love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, it's important for us to realize you can't dance in the fire without expecting to get burned. It's like, you can't go to a party where everyone's smoking and not expect your clothes to smell like smoke at the end of the night. You cannot be in a drama triangle and expect it not to affect you. It's going to affect you in all kinds of toxic ways. And the best solution is to get the hell away from it and just know that people will vilify you on the way out. But you know what? It'll be much more painful to stay in it because they'll vilify you if you're in it. It's like, no matter what it is. But yeah, hopefully this brings a lot of clarity to some people in need. And once again, this is our way of sending love and whatever wisdom we might be able to pass along to whoever might need it. So very grateful for all of you and having this great discourse on the drama triangle, which is so central to the human experience. I think pretty much everyone I explain the concept to is like, oh yeah, I've experienced that before, right? And it sucks. But wisdom is the greatest healer. And when we know better, we can do better to avoid unnecessary suffering and situations in which we might be getting disrespected and mistreated and manipulated. So it's just part of the human experience we all need to rise above. Let's do Friends Forever on 3, fist bump, group hug, we're out. And then back on for next week. I'm not sure who's running next week. Patty, you're running next week?
Next week is Joel. Joel's up next week. He's got a topic for us and I'm really excited about it. And then David, I'm hoping maybe in 2 weeks after that you might be up for a topic if you're around.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Let's look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll look at it and then
Yeah.
whatever you got, that would be great.
All right. Everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. Friends forever.
Enemies for never.
Enemies forever.